guys, hi, how's it going? How y'all doing today? Hopefully today finds you well. Today we're going through my 2024 palette ranking, in which I count backwards from the palettes that I used last year and the one that I liked the least to the one that I liked the best, and we crown one my palette of the year. And if that sounds like something you're interested in, please keep on watching. For those of you new here, hi, my name is Donna. I'm a lover of all things high and colorful beauty and self-care. Ultimately, this is my self-care. I like to come out here and talk to you guys about the good, the bad, the ugly, all the things coming into my collection, all the things leaving my collection. I hope that sounds like something you're interested in watching. And if it is, please keep on watching. I hope that you'll want to subscribe before you go. And with that said, let's roll into this palette ranking for the palettes that I tried in 2024. All right. So just to preface this, these are not brand new palettes for 2024. Some of these are pretty old palettes, but they are palettes that I tried for the first time in 2024. A lot of them do have a palette review on them. I think there are only maybe 3 to 5 in here that do not have a palette review on them, but 2 of those have a palette review upcoming, but I did start trying them in December, so I thought it was fair to add them into this, even though I feel like I should pause and put them into next year's. Maybe I'll do that. But at the same time, I did start using them in 2024. I did have an idea of how I felt about them in 2024. I just haven't posted the review on them yet. So I think I'm going to include them this year. I think I did that last year too. I feel some sort of way about not including them and waiting until next year to rank them, because I think it's fair for you guys to know. Let me know what you guys think about that. I think I have a good count of the palettes that I have in here. I do believe there were 41 palettes that I did use last year for the first time. Therefore, I have 41 palettes to rank. I'm not gonna probably be able to keep track because what I have written down is completely different than what well, not completely, but very different from what I have sitting in front of me. So I'm gonna try to go through them as quickly as possible. There are 2 palettes in this ranking that have been decluttered, but I did pull them out of my declutter bin, which stays here in my room with me until my friends and my family go through them. And I decluttered them during their review, and they just went into my declutter bin. My family hasn't been over. I mean, my daughter's been over to go through things, but she doesn't take palettes, let's be honest. So some other little disclaimers here is makeup is subjective, right? What I deem is my number 41 palette, last ranking palette, might be your first ranking palette. And what I deem my first ranking palette might be your last or somewhere in the middle for you. That's totally okay. Everybody has their own ideas and opinions on what works for them and what they love. And a lot of it honestly comes down to color story. There's some of it that comes down to formulation of the product, right? That I just did not get along with the formulation of the product. You might have a good time with their formula. So please, this is a judgment-free zone. We do not get mad at each other for not liking the things that each other likes. It's totally okay. This is how we be friends, right? I can talk to you about the things that I love and don't love, and you can do the same. So that said, let's roll into this. I'm excited to talk to you about the palettes that I have sitting in front of my face. I'm going to try not to be super chatty, but I do have my palette review series linked down in the description box for you. You can go and you can watch every single palette review over the last year has included these palettes for the most part. There are a handful of palettes that were not included in a review, and I will mention those as we get to them. So the number 41 palette that I have in here is Shayna B Miami Nights. So this is actually a palette that came to me in Ipsy many moons ago. I pulled it out of my Oh the Shame drawer to finally get some use out of, and ultimately I think it sat in the Oh the Shame drawer for a long period of time because it's just kind of a meh kind of color story, right? But honestly, I really do love pinks and reds on my eyes. I love purples on my eyes. I hated this palette. The formulation of this palette was not great. This glitter caused so much eye irritation, it wasn't even funny. It just wasn't great. The shimmers were not great. It was so powdery, it left a mess every single time I used it on my face and was more trouble than it was worth. So it was ranked number 41 because of that reason and that pressed glitter. Number 40 comes with Shinobi Miami. So the first iteration of this palette. This one is a little bit more warm toned. I do think it's also one of those matte color stories. This one did not have a glitter, which is why it ranks slightly higher, but its formula was no better than that other one. So it came in at 40, and these two did get decluttered this year. So the next two I have in here really kind of go hand in hand, honestly, but I do think one comes in slightly better than the next. Number 39, Number 39, I'm trying to keep track here, is the Rabanne handbag palette in Unnatural World. The problem with this palette is it isn't necessarily a super cohesive color story. I do not believe that those browns go really great with the two purples that are in here. In addition to that, this purple is kind of a cream and more like a base, more like a pastel-y lavender, like almost gray. I used it as a base for this purple often, but I don't think that this purple goes really well. This isn't a cohesive palette. And also this cream eyeshadow is just the weirdest, most inconsequential eyeshadow in my humble opinion. And the purple that is the only like shimmer in this does not function well as a shimmer. It's pretty. It's just also very, very subtle and not my cup of tea. Number 38 is this one, which is again the Rabanne handbag palette, Feel My Vibe. This one comes in slightly higher because it doesn't have one of those cream shadows in it, but also I will tell you it is one matte with 3 shimmers, and this shimmer is one of those shimmers that I was so excited to put on my eyes and it just did nothing. It looks like a beautiful periwinkle and there is really no color behind that shadow. The purple was a really deep, like kind of almost satin in that you could like move it on your lids and it didn't like take away from anything, and it wasn't like too grippy or anything like that. It wasn't like a shimmer, but it was shiny. It wasn't bad, but I would say that this is not my favorite palette, and these two Rabanne palettes may not live through my next declutter, and I feel like they just were not worth the money, and that's saying a lot because they are coming in lower on the ranking scale than a ColourPop palette, which I actually have had in my collection forever. This is the ColourPop Bretman Rock Lit palette, so y'all know that this has been out on the market for years. So this might be because it sat in my collection for a long time, long enough that maybe the formulation changed on it and I just don't know. I don't love ColourPop eyeshadows to begin with, so if a ColourPop eyeshadow comes in like really high in my ranking, that is a feat in and of itself. But this one specifically, I thought was going to be super great. The yellow was a great yellow. The rest of the shades were just kind of ho-hum, honestly. They didn't last very long on my lid space. It just was, I think there was a time and a place. Obviously, there was a time and a place for this palette to be amazing, but 2024 was not the time and place for this palette to be amazing. At 36, I do have the Morphe Mickey Mouse palette. And again, this is not a bad palette. It's just not also a great palette, and I am not a fan of Morphe eyeshadows. So if a Morphe eyeshadow formula comes pretty high up in my ranking, it's a pretty standout Morphe palette. I didn't have a horrible time with this palette. One of my favorite eye looks that came from that review series or that review video though came from this palette, so I'm gonna give it props, and that's why it's not coming in at the tail end. There obviously were worse palettes that I had, in my humble opinion, but this color story also doesn't really lean into, you know, a variety of eyeshadow looks that you can come up with it. The one thing I can say about this palette is it did take me out of my box in a way that I had to think up different ways to utilize this palette other than a black or a red or a yellow eye look, right? So it did lean into my creativity a little bit more than some of the other palettes here did, but it's still a Morphe eyeshadow palette. I bought it because I liked the IP, number one, but also because I really did like that it was a basic eyeshadow palette, red, black, and yellow. It's not bad. It's just also not great. The next palette I have lost track already. I've lost track already. The next palette I have is the Rabanne Handbag palette in Paradise Lost Then Found. So this one comes in at number 35 simply because I think the color story, I really did have a great time with this palette. I love greens. I love green on me to some extent. I don't love wearing green, but I love green eyeshadow. I really loved this eyeshadow for inner corner and all over the lid. It was truly beautiful. I really loved this green over the top of this green. It only has the one matte though, so that continues to put these little tiny quads into a lesser ranking in my humble opinion, because there's not a lot of variety that you're gonna get from that palette. I really also did like the kind of gray tone green in here. It was really pretty and it reminded me of the purple in the one palette where it stayed kind of sheeny but it wasn't shimmery, so it could function as kind of a shiny matte in an eye look. It was a really beautiful palette. The formulation in those shadows wasn't awful, and I had a better time with it when I was using it through review than the other two that I was using at the same time. So that one just came in a smidge bit ahead of them. The next one I have, which is number 34, is the Patrick Star One Size Visionary palette. And you guys, this is just about color story, because there was nothing about this palette that stood out, but there was also nothing about this palette that wasn't good. Like, except for this blue here. I wanted so much from this blue, but it honestly was just kind of the most lackluster blue. I don't think it's great. I think this palette would have been great without these three shades here. I think this would have been a more cohesive eyeshadow palette. These two blues, like, what are you going to do with them? I do like that it has a black in it, because black is good for anything. Like, if you need to deepen up anything, like, it's really good. I loved this row right here, specifically these two greens. They were beautiful. Again, I like green. Green's my favorite color. It was a decent eyeshadow palette, but from a color story perspective, the price of this palette, granted this has been in my collection for a grip ton of time. I think I got it in a FabFitFun. This was the first year I used it. I think it's at my palette collection in my Oh the Shame drawer, because it's just a boring color story, and that's truly why it lands at number 34 in my palette ranking, is because it's just a boring color story. And for number 33, I do have the Viseart Pro Deux palette, and the biggest reason why this comes in at 33 is because it's just a tiny palette. It's really good for on the go. I didn't really love this purple. I thought this purple was a really crappy purple. It did get hard pan quite a bit. The shimmers are really beautiful though, and these three colors are not bad, but it's just a basic palette. Except for that purple there, I do love Viseart mattes. I think Viseart mattes are really good. I don't love their shimmers, so that's kind of why this one comes in at 33. The next one I have is Witchy Worms. Witchy Worms was actually a really great palette. This is the first time I had ever tried anything from Hip Dot. This is another one of those palettes that came to me, I believe, in FabFitFun. It's a really warm eyeshadow palette. I don't mind a warm eyeshadow look, but that's really truly all you're going to get from this. And there's a lot of different colors in here, but so many of the eye looks look the exact same. Like, you're not going to get a whole lot of variety out of this palette. I love this palette though. I think that it's a really great formula. The only reason why it sits so far down in this ranking is because there are better. in my humble opinion, than this palette from a formula perspective, but also from a color story perspective. So I didn't feel like there was a lot of variety here. One of my favorite shadows though was this one here. Is a beautiful, beautiful dark brown, like shimmer shadow. It's not a bad palette. As a matter of fact, if there was, you know, somebody that was asking me about Hip Dot palettes, I would probably recommend this palette. It's a good palette. It's just not my favorite amongst the shadow palettes that I have sitting in front of me. The next one, it is probably going to shock some of you and maybe not shock some of you. The thing about it is that I'm always going to come to you with an honest opinion. And even though this is my favorite brand on the planet, I had to rank this one so low because I just struggled using this palette. And I don't know if it's because of the color story or what's going on with it. I like a green eye look. This is the Natasha Denona Retro Glam. I know this is a lot of people's favorites, but I partnered this up with the Sydney Grace in Mel's Memory palette, which you guys will see. It's coming up. And it was just so much easier to use than this one was. I did not have a fun time with this palette. I don't think I've picked it up one time since pulling it in for that review. The only two shadows that I really liked out of this was this green shimmer here and this green shimmer here. Potentially these two here, but the rest of these shadows I mean, could take or leave, honestly. The only reason why it will continue to stay in my collection is because it's a Natasha Denona palette. And I do think that there are some good things about this palette. I love this color story, if I'm honest with you. I just think in a nutshell, it just was not my favorite palette to use. I struggled a lot with this palette. So it comes in relatively low in my palette ranking. This one also may surprise a lot of people because I was so excited to get it into my collection, but I was kind of disappointed in this palette because it just didn't work in the way I thought it needed to. And that kept me from buying the next one as well. But it is the Melt Cosmetics Bailey Sarian Fatally Yours palette. Like, this is honestly, you know, when you only have, I mean, I'm not a creator that tries out hundreds of palettes every single year, right? I have 41 palettes. It's basically just over a week that I'm using each one of these palettes in a nutshell, right? If we were to average it out. I love this color story, and there are some shadows in here that are truly original, unique, and I am so happy to have in my collection. But I recently found out that Melt palettes are magnetic and you can take these out. One of you told me about that, and I can't be more happy about that because there are some shadows in here that I think are trash. And because of the amount of problems that I had with this collection, much like this one, I'm not going to sit and say that this should come any higher in the ranking than some of these other palettes that I didn't struggle with, right? Some of these shadows in here, all of these shadows in here are a lot darker than they appear in the pan. And that in and of itself was a struggle bus for me. I don't think that there's a problem with it being an all matte palette, except for to say Melt Cosmetics mattes are a pretty fickle beast, right? I knew what I was getting into with this palette. That much I would like to say, but I still can't rank it any higher up. Do I love this palette? Absolutely. Do I love it more than any of the other ones sitting here? No, which is why it needs to rank where it's ranked right now. Not that I don't love it, because I do. Not that I don't love Bailey, because I do. I love Bailey so much. But I didn't buy the other one because, I guess, more so because it wasn't really my cup of tea, but also because, I mean, yeah. And the next one I have on here is this one. And I feel like some sort of way for sticking this here, but ultimately this is about the color story. Again, it's just a plain Jane palette. This is the Patrick Ta Major Dimension 3 palette. It's just a plain Jane palette. It's got your warm tone browns and your cool tone browns in here. It's got a black and a brown cream shadow. Part of the reason why it's down here is because I didn't feel like these mattes. I love Patrick Ta's mattes. They blend so nicely. They're just super easy to use. But these mattes in this palette, and maybe I got a dud, but these didn't last very long on my eyes. I did not have a good time with this, and I purchased this palette. At the time that I purchased this palette, I was going back and forth between this one and the Danessa Myricks, the Groundworks palette, the first one, the first iteration, and I opted for this one, and I was so sad at the end of the day when I got done reviewing this that I had opted for this one, because I have the Groundwork Blooming palette and I feel like it is an impeccable palette. You'll see it later in this ranking. And I feel like the other Groundworks palette would have been the better option. They are roughly the same price. This is a $70 palette that I didn't even 100% love using. So that was really disappointing for me. The next one I have is Il Makiage Color Boss Squad Multi-Dimensional Eye Color Quad in the Real Deal. And I got this for my daughter. She got it in one of her Ipsy bags and she gave it to me as a birthday present, and I used it in a Get Ready With Me. So this one I do not have a review on, but I do have a review on a different Color Boss Quad that I have from Il Makiage. I love their shadows. I think their shadows are really, really nice. But again, it's just a quad. A lot of the smaller eyeshadow palettes you will see come in towards the latter half of my ranking because they're just a one and done kind of eyeshadow palette, right? It's not something that I can take on the road with me unless I want the same eye look over and over and over again. Although I do think that this one you could get probably 2 to 3 eye looks out of. It's just not got the variety built into it that I need for, or that I want, I guess, for my eyeshadows. So a lot of the quads and quints come in towards the latter half of my eyeshadow palette ranking every single year. This isn't bad. You note it is ranked up against, you know, and comes in before the Patrick Ta $70 eyeshadow palette. I do think that these quads are a little overpriced for what they are by Il Makiage, but they are really good. I did love the mattes in here. I did love the shimmers in here, even though the shimmer kind of reminds me of the Viseart shimmer formula, maybe a slight bit more sparkly. Really nice quad, really great formula, no fallout whatsoever, blends super easy, but it's just, at the end of the day, it's just a quad. On that note, I also have a quint in here, which is the Natasha Denona Mini Rose quint. I don't think, again, that this is a horrible palette. It's just a quint, right? It's just a mini eyeshadow palette that you're gonna get. This one I was able to get like 4 looks out of without feeling like they were redundant, which was nice. I do love Natasha Denona's formula. I think that her formula is, you know, obviously she's my favorite brand. She's the brand that I have the most from. And like, her eyeshadow formula is impeccable. I do think that this is an impeccable quint. I don't love this eyeshadow. I think that we have done this so many times. It's not even funny. I feel like this could have been something different. It's one of those like peachy pink to gold, like kind of flippy shades, not quite a duochrome, but not quite not. I do think that it is listed as a duochrome on here. It is. It's listed as a duochrome. I do not think it's a duochrome. With that said, it's a quint. It was good. It's good in a pinch. It would be a good one to travel with. I like that it has 3 mattes, 2 shimmers. I like that the 2 shimmers are completely different. One's a little more icy, one's a little more warm. I do like that about this palette, but I do think that it's just a quint. And with that said, the next one, and I think the last like tiny palette in this bunch, is going to be this one here, which is the Pat McGrath Labs Bijou Brilliance, which came out for, I think, holiday this year. Was it last year? I can't remember. Not last year, 2024. Last year, 2023. Anyways, the reason why this is coming in before all those is because there is some variety to this, right? Like when you're looking at this quint, you can see so many different things. The thing that I hate about it is there's only one matte here, but this one matte goes with every single one of these. I feel like this also is a really good shimmer in that it is kind of a matte based shimmer with not a lot of sparkle to it. I mean, it's got a lot of sparkle, don't get me wrong. But it does complete a look, right? I think that this one, and this one could have gone like hand in hand as far as the ranking scale goes. The only reason why I have this one ranked higher than those two is because it's got a bigger color variety to it, right? Not because it's better or worse, just because it's got a great color variety to it. I love the shimmers in the palette. I love that palette. That's the first like Pat McGrath holiday collection palette in a very long time that really sparked some interest for me. So I do think this is palette number 25. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66, 67, 68, 69, 70, 71, 72, 73, 74, 75, 76, 77, 78, 79, 80, 81, 82, 83, 84, 85, 86, 87, 88, 89, 90, 91, 92, 93, 94, 95, 96, 97, 98, 99, 100, 101, 102, 103, 104, 105, 106, 107, 108, 109, 110, 111, 112, 113, 114, 115, 116, 117, 118, 119, 120, 121, 122, 123, 124, 125, 126, 127, 128, 129, 130, 131 So 41, 40, 39, 38, 36, 35, 34, 33, 34, 35, 29, 30. I mean, if I leave that in for you, it will be a treat because I just recounted these palettes like 50 times. I won't leave that back in for you. This is number 25. Number 25 is the Too Faced Aptly in Love. Listen, this smells real good. I love the tin packaging. I think it's great. At the end of the day, this is a decent palette. It's just a meh palette. Like, it's just a palette that's in my collection to be in my collection. There's nothing spectacular about this palette. There's nothing that I like more or less than another palette. I do think that, you know, we have one of those shadows that's one of those peachy pinkies to gold, like flippy duochromes in here. We have a couple of really beautiful, like champagne-y tones. What I love about this palette is it's got really, really deep and odd coloration iteration to it. And it's got really light tones as well. Like, these two shades are beautiful shades, but also very, very fickle. Probably the worst in the palette, but also the best in the palette from a color perspective. Like, they were my favorite to put into an eye look, but my least favorite to use. I think that these two greens kind of do not have a place in this palette. If I'm honest with you, I really did love this color here. I really did love these two browns here. I mean, it's an okay palette. It's just, I mean, just an okay palette. I don't love that the packaging is kind of, I mean, yes, it's the tin packaging. I love the tin packaging. I love the smell of it. It smells like caramel apples. But my palette doesn't stay like closed, so it was really hard to travel with. It was really hard even to like pick up off of my vanity without it like spilling open and my fingers digging into it, so it was pissing me off in that way. But that is number 25 simply because it just is. It just is a palette. It's not a bad palette. It's not a good palette. Honestly, from this point forward, I really, really like all these palettes, and it was really, really hard for me to figure out a place for these palettes to go and make it make sense in my head. And it came right down to, while I was putting them into their like places, it came right down to me making different decisions for these palettes as I was putting them into the stacks that I have them. So this is number 24. Number 24 is in a singles palette because it is the Sydney Grace in Mel's Memory palette, which was the counterpart to the Natasha Denona Retro Glam palette. And you guys know that that came in very, very low on the totem pole as far as ranking goes. This one has the same color story and then some. It's actually got 4 more shadows or 5 more shadows than that one does. It's just, it was so much easier to use, you guys. It was so much easier to use, so much better as far as overall blendability of some of these more difficult shadows that I feel like Natasha has a hard time with. Like some of those more white based, some of those more like pastel shadows. I just think that Natasha doesn't do those well. Like the pastel palette was also one of my least favorite palettes by Natasha, and those are white based. Again, that might be something that you think that she does well. I just don't. this one was such a better palette to use. I do not think that this pink has a place, but I also think that it is a beautiful shade and I'm happy to have it in my collection. This was just such an easy palette to use and I'm happy that I did purchase this even though I already had the Retro Glam palette, and I'm happy that I even put them up against each other in a palette review, because that way we were able to see it all come together. And I think there was a video that I did one side of my face with that palette and one side with Retro Glam, and I ended up having to take the Retro Glam one off twice in order to get it to work for me, and it just wasn't fun. It just wasn't fun. The number 23 palette that I have then would be the Melt Cosmetics Halloween Town palette. This was a palette I was so excited to get. I jumped on this bandwagon right when it launched, right? I like this palette. I did have a lot more fun with it than I did the Bailey Sarian palette. It is pretty, but I got hard pan on this matte. I got hard pan on this matte. I got hard pan on this shimmer, and this shimmer is like just a gold, and I'm not a fan of just a gold, right? I wish it had a little bit more nuance to it. It wasn't a hard palette to use. It just wasn't my favorite of the two. It's a decent palette. I love the color story of it, honestly, but I think that, again, here we go again, right? Melt Cosmetics shadows are just a little bit more fickle, and I'm happy to have this in my collection. Do not get me wrong, but it is coming in at 23 because it's just coming in at 23. At number 22, I have the Unearthly Cosmetics Not Normal palette. This comes down to color story, honestly, which saddens me because this was a palette that I wanted so dang bad. And maybe I'm a little bit bitter also because this was a palette that I wanted so dang bad. I finally pulled the trigger on it. They pulled it from their lineup and then came out with an 18 pan new Not Normal palette. And that really, I felt some sort of way about that. It didn't piss me off, but I felt some sort of way about that because I was like, if I had known that they were coming out with an 18 pan, I would have waited, because this color story, there's just not enough. And I feel like the 18 pan palette has enough. So now I've got this 12 pan palette, right, that I think is beautiful, but I just don't feel like there's enough to it to make it cohesive enough to be a one and done eyeshadow palette, in my humble opinion. I do like it. Don't get me wrong. I think that these shadows are beautiful. They blend beautifully. It's a wonderful formula between Unearthly, Ensley Rain, Cosmic Beauty, Adept Cosmetics, all the like indie brands that I've tried this year. Like, I'm finding that I really like some indie brands. But this one just wasn't my favorite out of Unearthly Cosmetics brands, and I think that Unearthly is one of my new favorite brands, honestly. These two could really go hand in hand. These are face palettes, but they're in here because they are also eye palettes. So I put the Hyper Natural face palette in here for number 21, right? Because I didn't love any of these shadows in here. And I also didn't love the bronzer in here. So overall, this isn't my Natasha Denona palette as far as that goes. The shadows aren't bad. It's just, I think that they're a new formula for Natasha, and I didn't have a great time with them. They're all like kind of like satiny or shimmery, and I didn't really love that. If you want a matte, you have to use the two, like the blush tones or the bronzer tones, and I thought that was like whatever, right? Yes, I know that you can use those as mattes in your eye look, but I don't want to have to use a blush or a bronzer as a matte in my eye look. First world problems, I understand that, but I didn't really, the only shimmer in this palette that I really liked was this one here. And that's because it was beautiful and could go into an inner corner, could go all over the lid, and it was pretty impactful, honestly. They have a little bit of a wet effect to them while also performing more like a satin than a shimmer, and I love Natasha Denona shimmers, so I was wanting a little bit more from this eyeshadow formulation than what I think I got in this eyeshadow formulation. So that came in at number 20. I guess these two could probably be shifted, I guess. But again, here we are. And then the Natasha Denona Love palette. I feel this is another face palette. It's got a blush and a highlighter in it. Both are cream. I feel like these shadows were much better than the shadows in the Hyper Natural face palette. I love that there were 4 mattes, 1 shimmer here. So you got a really nice variety within this quint, right? Because that's really what it comes down to, is these are kind of quints with a little bit of extra. It is just what it is. So number 20 was this one. I feel like we should switch that up. So for number 22, we should go the Natasha Denona Hyper Natural palette, right? 24, 23. For number 21, we should go the Natasha Denona Love Face palette. For number 20, we should go the Unearthly Not Normal palette. The numbers 19 and below are all palettes I really, really loved. Okay, so it was really, really hard coming up with these numbers. Okay, first and foremost, number 19, I have the Glamlight Michaela Part 2 palette. Pot 2. I really loved this palette. Okay, it has a color story that I can get behind. It has a slew of colorful eyeshadows. It also has some really great like mid-tone shadows for you to be able to create even a typical everyday eye look out of this. You're gonna get a lot. You've also got some really beautiful shimmers in this palette. Glamlight used to at one point in time have one of my favorite formulas. It's not necessarily my favorite formula anymore, but this is a really great palette and it was super fun to play with, and I really, really enjoyed my time with it. I felt like it had a lot of variety in it. I mean, it was just super fun. Number 18 would be the Melt Cosmetics Christmas Town palette, which is comical because when I placed my order for Halloween Town, nobody had any idea that this one was coming out also. And I would have been so sad to not have this in my collection also. It's got Jack on the front, and this is the color story of it. I just feel like this is more my color story than the Halloween Town one is. I love purples. Obviously, that's what I'm wearing. I love greens. I love reds. Even this shadow up here, which I didn't think had a place in this palette, I think has a place in this palette. This is a better like chartreusey green than the one that is in the Halloween Town palette, which comes off as more of a gold. This one is more of a white gold, so it's a gold I can live with. I didn't have any problems with hard pan with this palette, and I just felt like every look I got from it was amazing. So this one does come in at number 18. I feel like the formula is still rather fickle, right? So that's why it's maybe ranking a little bit lower on the ranking scale than some of the other ones in here. But I also like really love the IP, so there's that. I had a good time with this palette. The next one would be number 17, right, which is the Sydney Grace Love's Journey palette. This was one that I got free gift with purchase in the Christmas and July sale, not this last year, but the year before. This is what it looks like. Really nice, cool tone eyeshadow palette, just kind of a eyeshadow palette of eyeshadow palettes. I love that it's got some warm tones in here. I love that these are magnetic pans. There were some really stand out beautiful shimmers in this palette. I think that's why it's here and not like further up in the like ranking, but also this is a really good palette. Like the shadows lasted forever on my eyes. I did not have any problems with fallout. Like nothing irritated my eyes. Like I felt like you could get a lot of variety out of this palette. If you like a warm tone look, you can get that. If you like a cool tone look, you can get that. If you like a neutral look, you can get that, right? It's like your perfect brown eyeshadow palette because you're getting a little bit of all the worlds as far as neutrality goes in this eyeshadow palette. So all-encompassing neutral eyeshadow palette had to come in at number 17. For number 16, just slightly above that, we're going to put Natasha Denona Xenon. Listen, I love this palette. I love this palette so much, but there's not a lot that you can do with this, right? I do love that a lot of these shadows lean a little bit blue, and I do love that some of these shadows lean a little bit pink. I do like this eyeshadow palette, but there's just... This should have stayed the 5-pan mini Xenon palette, right? That is one of my favorite eyeshadow palettes. This one, I don't think would be fair to rank it any higher than it is, even though I truly do love this palette. Had no problems with blendability with this palette, had no problems with the formulation of them, and had some shimmers in here that were true standouts. I just don't think it's fair to put it any further up in the palette ranking because you just get one. It's very one-noted, right? It's very one-noted. It's not a monochromatic eyeshadow palette, but it kind of is all at the same time. Number 15 sits here simply because it is a specialty palette. And that would be the Danessa Myricks Lightwork Volume 5. This is the I Am palette. Everything in here is like, I am resilient, I am radiant. So it is a affirmations palette, if you will. This is a beautiful palette, but it is a very specific palette. You have to have another palette with it. Do I think that it deserves the number 15 spot? Looking at the palettes that I have like above it, I think that it has the capacity to be higher up than number 15 if it had some mattes in it, and this was a one and done eyeshadow palette. It's just not a one and done eyeshadow palette, but my God, every single shadow in this palette is amazing. So if you have not tried Danessa Myricks eyeshadows, like, you are missing out. Like, her multi-chromes are by far the best that you can get mainstream market. Meaning that you can pick them up at Sephora. You don't necessarily have to go to the indie space to pick, like, an indie brand website to pick them up, right? It makes me sad that that's number 15, but I also know that I can't do anything with myself. I can't do anything with that palette without bringing another palette in. And part of what stands out in my collection as a palette that becomes number 1 is a palette that I can take on the road with me and have everything I need in that one eyeshadow palette. So little nuggets of information for you. The next one I have in here is the Winter Wonderland palette by Cosmic Beauty. Listen, this is a beautiful eyeshadow palette. Number 14 is not too shabby of a space to stick into, to have, right? I have just recently had it in my collection. I really do love the formulation of it. The only reason why it's coming in at 14 instead of much higher in the ranking is because, again, it's kind of like a specialty, right? This is blues and purples and greens, and I feel like it's a beautiful color story, and you guys will shout at me through the screen because there's one that's really high up in the ranking that is almost the same color story, but I felt like I could get a lot more from that one than this one. This isn't one noted. Like, everything that I was able to produce as far as an eye look with this palette was stunning. The multi-chromes in here are stunning, but there's only a couple, right? And the other one has quite a few. I didn't find that any of them bothered my eyes at all. I did have a few shades though that I didn't love using. This one, and this one did not perform super well for me. But that could be user error. That could be user error as well. So, like, I mean, it's a beautiful palette. Don't get me wrong. I still have 4 more eyeshadow palettes from Cosmic Beauty in my Oh the Shame drawer that I am so excited to get out and use. This will likely not be a palette that I can see myself getting rid of anytime soon. Number 14 is not too shabby of a position to come into. The next 2 palettes I have here are Pat McGrath palettes. I think they could go hand in hand, but for number 13, I did put Bronze Seduction in the number 13 spot, and I put Moonlit Seduction in the number a 12 spot. And the only reason why Moonlit Seduction comes in a little bit higher than Bronze Seduction is because of the special shades in that palette. So looking at Bronze Seduction first, like I just feel like this side of the palette is beautiful. I think that these are really great shimmers. These are probably some of the best like special shades that I have had in my collection from Pat McGrath. These mattes are also really beautiful, and even the like shimmer shades. I really love this purple, so I was really excited to get like a purple from Pat McGrath. I was also excited that this doesn't really lean super pink, which most of her palettes lean super pink, right? I didn't find that very many of the eye looks that I got out of this palette were of the pink nature. So I really did love this palette for that. But it is just a color story that is kind of, again, runs that realm of like a regular palette, right? But was really excited about that purple and really did have a good time with the special shades that were in that palette. Sorry, fighting with the box for Moonlit Seduction, which would be my number 12 spot. And even though this palette does lean pink, right, with the 3 mattes that are in it, I feel like you could get like such beautiful eyeshadow looks out of this palette. This silver, taupey silver, is so pretty. This shade right here that looks kind of blue in your screen is very like purple pink. Like I loved it from a dual chrome perspective. These two down here were beautiful. I even really loved this like goldy greeny, like really beautiful, also kind of flippy shade here. I loved this palette, and I don't love very many Pat McGrath palettes, if I'm honest, but these two I really had a grand time with, and they spark joy for me every single time I think about utilizing them on my eyes. And yeah, I would say that those two can't belong in the top 10, but they needed to come in somewhere close to the top 10. So for number 11, you know, I kind of went back and forth with where this one should have landed. I do think that this one could be in the top 10. But the reason why I'm not putting it in the top 10 is because I do think that there's a slight bit of redundancy in this palette. I wish we had just went with like a regular like 15 pen palette. I think that he added extra in here to make up the 18 pans that he didn't have to make up because there's some redundancy in here. And that is the Lunar Beauty Nude Prism palette. I did pick this up at JCPenney earlier in 2024. I think it was probably somewhere around like June, July 2024. And it is just a regular like color story, right? This is your neutral color story. I love that there's light neutrals on top, dark neutrals on bottom, and that we have a whole row of shimmers in here that kind of feed into every single other shade in this palette. I will say though, these shimmers, there's a ton of redundancy in these shimmers. Like there's easily 2 shimmers could have done the job that these 6 shimmers are doing. So like I said, I think that he added more shades in here to make this look like easily more cohesive, but it's just more redundancy. These 2 shades right here look almost the exact same on an eye look, right? I feel like these two shades down here look almost the exact same on an eye look. So there's a lot of redundancy in this palette that I don't think needs to exist there, but my God, these shadows are fantastic. From a neutral perspective, really beautiful. From a shimmer perspective, also really beautiful. I just feel like there could have been less, and we could have had a similar palette that performed just as good, if not better. So now we're down to the top 10, and I feel real confident, I think, with my top 10. I feel real confident, I think, with my top 10. I think it's going to surprise you guys. I think so. And again, I'm just saying, like, a lot of these palettes are not palettes that are new on the market, but they were new to me this year. New, and I just tried them in 2024. Number 10, I have Unearthly Lore. So this palette is only coming in at number 10 because it's only a 9-pan color story. Do I think that it you know, could feasibly be somebody's number one. I absolutely think it could be somebody's number one. This palette is a beautiful palette. It reminds me of that grungy color story that I love so much. And if you love a grungy color story, you will also like this. The multi-chromes in here are fantastic. I was feeling a little bit some sort of way because there were only 4 mattes and 5 singles, and I like it to be flip-flopped if that is the way it's going to be, specifically for a little 9-pan eyeshadow palette, and specifically because one of these mattes has glitter in it. But this works so well. This works so well with the 5 shimmers that are in here. Like, oh my God, I had so much fun with this eyeshadow palette. And if I could rank it higher with what I've got in my palette, I guess I could rank it higher, right? It is my ranking. I feel like the ones that are coming in before this one, or, you know, after this one, are better and have larger color stories. So maybe not better. I think better is a subjective word, and I think it's maybe the wrong word. But I loved this palette. Unearthly has become so big in my mind as far as new indie brands that I've tried. Number 9 is the Adept Cosmetics Plain Jane Remastered eyeshadow palette, and this is what it looks like. You know, I kind of went back and forth with whether this should be number 10 or Lore should be number 10, but I did end up putting this one at number 9 because I just, even though it's not a matte, there's no mattes in this eyeshadow palette. These shimmers are not shimmers that bothered my eyes at all, even though they're multi-chromes and duochromes, and those tend to bother people's eyes, mine specifically. But this is a palette that is full of one and done eyeshadows that you truly do not have to. You don't have to do anything with them. Like, you can just pop them on and they are so beautiful. Like, when I think about this one and the Danessa Myricks one, which ranked, what, number 15? Like, I think these two could go hand in hand, but these are much friendlier, I think, to my eyes than the Danessa Myricks ones were. I don't know. I know it doesn't make any sense, but this is my ranking, so there's that. I also think that there is plenty enough of the shadows in this palette that are a little bit more satiny than they are shimmery, and can feed into, like, I mean, just a blend of shadow on your eyes that looks like it's well put together, even if you just slap it on with your finger. I think that Danessa Myricks falls into that same boat, sure, but this one is nice and compact and super thin and fits really nicely in my collection. I really had a good time with that. My number 8 palette is probably going to have to be the Natasha Denona Roxa palette. This is what is on my eyes today. I would say it's number 8 though, because I have used this a plethora of times. I have used this purple shadow probably 4 times. And in those 4 times use, I think I have been able to not screw with this shadow for an extended period of time. Never. So this is just a really difficult, it reminds me of the Natasha Denona Love palette, the purple that's in that palette. Even though this is a new formula of purples, I feel like this purple doesn't function any better than that purple in the Love palette did. And maybe that's a me problem. Maybe it's a my eyes problem. I do have eczema on my eyes, so sometimes, like, it is difficult to use some shadows that maybe other people do not have a hard time using on their eyes. But that is the reason why this palette is coming in at number 8. And this is one of the palettes that I haven't quite yet done a palette review on. I am reviewing it right now, which is why it's on my eyes. I'm in that process right now. I do think it's beautiful. I love this palette. Don't get me wrong. That purple is just a little bit more difficult to use. I love that it goes really, really light. I love that it goes really, really deep. The shades in here are fantastic. This shade here is kind of like this, like, really beautiful, like almost periwinkle shadow. And I mean, probably more periwinkle than I've experienced in any shimmer eyeshadow before. I think that she did a really good thing with this shadow because it is so pretty. and it's aesthetically pleasing to look at, right? Number 7 is going to be the Unearthly Dreamer palette. This is on the totally opposite spectrum of the Natasha Denona Roxy palette. It is the same kind of like thought process as far as color story goes, but I think that I love that this has a blue in it, so it has a little bit more of an oomph to it. I did put a blue liner on my lower lash line today just to kind of give that Rox palette just a little bit more of a kick. It's not super one-noted. You can get some really beautiful like pink looks out of this, really beautiful purple, really beautiful blue. The shimmers in here are duochromatic and so beautiful and so sparkly and just so sparkly. Like, I love the shimmers in the Natasha Denona formula, but I love the shimmers in this Unearthly formula. They're so nice, and I don't remember any of them bothering my eyes in the way like maybe Adepts in the like Ninhydrin palette did. Really beautiful eyeshadow palette. So that would be number 7. Number 6 is going to be the Melt Cosmetics Smoke Sessions palette. If you guys saw this review, I had so much fun with this eyeshadow palette. And this shadow here, these two down here on the end, holy cow, they look backlit. Even these two here also kind of look very backlit. The one thing that I could say is I don't 100% love that this matte specifically looks a whole lot darker than what it looks like in the pan. But these mattes go really super well with all of the shimmers in this palette as well. I just think that it was... I remember, I think I was reviewing this at the same time as I was reviewing the Melt Fatally Yours with Bailey Sarian, and I remember this being the shining spot in my moments when I was doing eye looks for that review process, because it was just such a pretty palette to deal with. And I like that it's got 3 mattes in it so that it can be potentially a one and done. It doesn't go super light. It does go super dark, but it's a lot of fun. I think the next several palettes are really hard for me because I think they could all interchangeably be number 1. But they are our top 5. So in the number 5 spot, I do have the Ensley Rain Lands of Enchantment palette. Now this reminds me of the Cosmic Beauty Winter Wonderland palette, only, I don't know, better. It's a beautiful palette. It's got that same like color story pinks and blues and greens, right? But it goes really, really light, really, really deep. Every single one of these shades worked with each other. Every single one of these shades lasted forever on an eye look. Every single one of these shades was beautiful on an eye look, except for this one. I did not love that one, but that was about the color, not about the performance of it. I also did kind of struggle with this one here. It did bother my eyes just a slight bit, which is why it is ranking number 5 and not number 2 or number 1. I love that this one really looks very backlit when you have it on your eyes. It's just such a beautiful palette. It's just such a beautiful palette. I had such a good time with this, and this was honestly a palette that I was not going to pick up from Ensley Rain. It's a $88 eyeshadow palette that, I mean, that's pastels, right? And if we know, we know. I don't love pastels. I loved that palette. It was so much fun to work with. Number 4 is going to be the Danessa Myricks Groundwork Blooming palette. This is the rosy toned of the 2 palettes that I picked up, and I did end up picking up the regular one of this, right? The first one, the first iteration of this with the browns in it, but I haven't used it yet. It's still in my drawer of shame. This palette smells good, number 1. I don't think that it's supposed to be scented, but it does smell really, really nice. I love that it is a cream and a matte powder formula of every single one of these shades. You can do a really nice wing with any of these creams and it stays forever. The creams work in and of themselves. You don't have to go over the top of them with a matte, but going over the top of them with the matte will help them last longer. But even then, the creams lasted for me a good 8 hours. They lasted a good 10 to 12 with the matte over the top of them. I love that it's magnetic, that you can pull these out. You can put them into a smaller eyeshadow palette for you to utilize when taking them on the road to work with, like any of the other Danessa Myricks palettes. I love this palette. I think it's a really great for me. Pink is a crease color. Pink is a neutral color. eyeshadow palette that I could leave out on my vanity and probably get use out of every single day. Number 3 is going to be the Inslee Rain Cold Moon palette. I'm using this currently with the Natasha Denona Roxette palette as part of the palette review series that I do here on my channel. This is a review that is going to come up. You guys should know that with both of them showing up in the top, section of the top 20 palettes, that the review is going to be good, right? I love this color story, and it shocks me actually because I never would have deemed myself a cool tone person. I love also that it's got shimmer matte, shimmer matte, shimmer matte, so you're getting a good round number of both. Like it's a 50-50 composition of shimmers to mattes. The shimmers in this palette are amazing. Not one of them has yet to mess with my eyes, which I know can happen with these more flaky shimmers. They do duochromes and multichromes so well. Do I think that they do them better than Danessa? Yes, actually, which is why they come in as close to number 1 as possible. Do I think that they do shimmers better than Danessa? Maybe not. Do I think that they do shimmers better than Natasha? Maybe. But definitely their duochromes are, bar none, some of the best that I have thus far came across from the indie space. I do know that, Unearthly has some really great ones too. Those ones also don't bother my eyes. They're not quite as impactful, or at least in the 2 palettes that I've used from Unearthly, they're not quite as impactful, but I still have quite a few palettes from Unearthly I haven't quite used yet. So there's that. Number 2 is the Natasha Denona My Dream palette. I know that this has been out for a while. I know that I picked it up as soon as it came out. I know that I didn't use it at all until this year. This is what the color story looks like. The reason why this comes in at number 2 is because this is just such a cohesive eyeshadow formula, just such a cohesive eyeshadow color story, just such a cohesive eyeshadow look that you're going to get out of this. You have a little bit of everything. You even have a multi-chrome here, which in the screen looks pink, and to me on the side looks green. I think that it is a truly one and done eyeshadow palette. If this was the only one that lived in my collection, I would probably be satisfied with the eye looks that I was able to complete out of this palette. And that said, the reason why it comes in at number 2 and something like this does not is because this is very gray, whereas I feel like this has a little bit of that neutrality to it, a little bit of the warmth to it. I do think that it's got a little bit of cool tone to it, but this could have been, I know that it's Natasha's perfect palette, but it could also have been my perfect palette. And I think I said that in the review that I did on this palette this year. The number 1 palette, surprisingly not Natasha, and it's surprisingly also not Inslee Rain, which I really did think it was going to be this year, but instead it is Huda Beauty Pretty Grunge. This came out last year for her holiday palette. It was her 2023 holiday palette. I didn't pick up her holiday palette this year. I don't often pick up the palettes from Natasha or from Huda, even though I know it was her last one. This is my perfect palette. This is such a beautiful color story. Even the glitters are so really stunning and beautiful. I love that it's got a really deep section that is really grungy. I love that it's got a really light section for helping to like blend anything out or go after anything on the other side of the spectrum. The shimmers in here are truly beautiful. Not indie beautiful, but they are truly beautiful. There's no duochromes in here, but they are truly beautiful. I even really like the cream shadow in here for the opportunity to use it as like not only a base, but also as an eyeliner. I truly think, much like I said with this one, if this were the only palette that I had in my collection, I didn't love things like I love things, I think that I could be happy with this being the only palette in my palette collection. And utilizing it this year, I think I said in my palette review that I could foresee this being my number 1 palette of the year, and it is my number 1 palette of the year. So, what are you guys' thoughts? because I'm feeling some sort of way looking at how I had these like all situated. I'm feeling some sort of way. Like I said, it came right down to the wire, like me deciding to put a palette in the ranking where I put a palette in the ranking. Often as I was pulling the palettes out, changed, right? So I would be interested to hear your guys' thoughts, and I would be interested to hear what your number one palette of the year was. The Cold Moon and the Natasha Denona Roxette palette are currently in review status right now, so that review will be coming up probably next week or the week after. So you'll hear more about those palettes then, but I would love to hear your thoughts on the palettes that I ranked and how they ranked and where you would rank some of them and which one would be your favorite palette of the year. So please hit a girl up down in the comment section. I would love to hear from you guys down there. Thank you for spending so much time with me today. I know this was a dang long video, and I hope that you enjoyed every single moment of it. I couldn't help but talk about every single one of these palettes instead of just ranking them, so that you knew the thought process that was going through my head, if there was a thought process going through my head about why I had them ranked the way I did. But I would be interested to hear from you down in the comment section. I thank you guys so dang much for being part of my YouTube fam and spending some time with me today. I hope that you and yours are doing well. I hope that you are all safe and healthy and getting along as best you can. I hope that you are all loving each other, being kind humans, and living your best life. And until next time, bye friends.